that's studied a lot into it, but nothing has really prepared me for what I was to learn from Father God himself. Lor. So this short sharing is really going to be about what I have learned from Father God on my identity and my roles as a son, as a husband, and as a father. Right? So very quickly, I just a quick background. I spent 22 years of my life in public service with the Ministry of Defense. I spent 7 years leading a non-profit organization called the Center for Fathering, driving the Dads for Life movement. For the past year, I'm only a businessman trying to make sure that I keep people employed and my wife happy. So that's pretty much the journey that I've been so far. But at least touching my heart today, I can say that for the last 8 years, for the last 14 years, I've pretty much been more involved husband and father, right? Yeah. So the anchor verse of my sharing is really taken from Ephesians 2, verses 8 to 10. Let me just read it out. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And that's this not from ourselves. It is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are all God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do the good works that He has prepared in advance for us to do. This is pretty much the journey that I have experienced moving forth. We all know from Galatians and Romans how we are not justified by faith. Without commitment, we are all justified by faith without having to, fully commit to the Mosaic laws and all. And once we have become new creations in Christ Jesus, we do have great works prepared in ahead for every one of us, right? And that will be further elaborated in Ephesians 4 to 6 as you read those. What it really means to me is regardless of the circumstances that we have all come through, that God still has a purpose for each and every one of us because we have been created in His image, and there is purpose for that. Okay. And this continues to be an encouragement to me because not have I just come out of a very dark place in my life. Even as I come out into the light, I continue to find dark places in my life along the way. But at least now I know that I do not journey to it alone. I know that no matter how hopelessness or helpless I feel in certain circumstances, He is already there. He's already ahead of us. We just need to look for God's fingers in our lives, in the paths ahead, and just come alongside and partner Him in doing the things that He has already prepared in advance for us to be doing. And I think that is for those of us who are parents today, we need to constantly be bringing that, discerning it for our children and to help them to find those pathways that obviously they see God's presence in, right? So this is maybe slightly dated picture of mine. I look better there than I look today, But unfortunately, my wife has this thing about not posting recent pictures for the safety of our kids, right? So for parents here, don't post recent pictures of your kids. Don't post pictures with your school uniform, the names, and all those kind of stuff. If you don't want to get unnecessary trouble. For me, my kids don't like me posting because they say once they go to school and then people know. I mean, previously my previous job, when people know that I'm from Dads for Life, they say, "How come you're like that? Why your father like that? You're like that, right?" I think pastor kids can relate to that, lah. So they get a lot of it. I learned. I also get a lot of it because when I go for parents teacher meetings, which I hate, they will say, "How come your kids are like that? How come your kids are like that?" I'm like, "Eh, we're as real as can be, lah. This is who we are, right? Just work with me to manage the situation." So today I can joke about these things. I can talk about my family. And this picture is also a reminder for me that if God has not intervened into my life, if He has not placed a godly man into my life 10 years ago, I wouldn't be in this picture because I was actually in a very dark place in my life where I felt like a hero out there but a zero at home. I think I excelled in my career with the ministry, but yet I felt so empty and shallow because I didn't have a relationship with my wife. I didn't want a relationship with my two kids at that point in time. I struggled as a husband. I struggled as a father. It even came to a point where I wanted out of the marriage. I wanted out of the family. I even wanted out of life, just to end the misery of me feeling like a hypocrite, me fearing that people will find out who the real Brian is, right? Outside of the uniform, outside of the community service, outside of all the church ministries that I was helming. I was just a hypocrite and I couldn't live with myself. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. And the truth of the matter is, I didn't even know who I was because I was putting on so many different facades. I was living so many secret lives that I just couldn't reconcile with it. And the shame, the guilt, um, the embarrassment, the frustration, and after that, depression just got just overwhelmed me to the point that I just wanted out of it, right? Yeah. So I still remember that at one point, at really the lowest, I was really contemplating, I mean, giving up on life itself. That I asked God, is there anything else that was worth living for, lor? So somehow a string of divine arrangements just happened, lor, right? I was introduced to Bob Buford's book, Halftime, read the thing, resonated with it. For the first time, allow myself to be open to a male mentor, a coach, a life coach who was willing to come and speak into my life. It was meant to be a 1 year journey. After the second session, I wanted to quit. He refused to let me quit. He pursued me. He held on to me and made sure that I stayed the course. Hated him then, but I was thankful that I decided to just let him do what he needed to be doing, right? To speak life and to minister to me without even me realizing he was doing that. Through that process, I penned down a personal mission statement about empowering dads to be better leaders in the community, at home, in the community, for the nation, and I couldn't understand what that meant. So of course, naturally, I went to Google for fathering and men's thing in Singapore, right? And then I got a few hits on Center for Fathering, Elijah 7000, Men's Ministry Network, Dads for Life, and all those sites at that time in 2014 or was it 2015 were all just um, not men. They were outdated. It wasn't even active. It was dormant. Uh, but the interesting thing was one thing that I realized when I read all these sites was there's this one common guy, this guy who just happened to be featured in all of these sites. His name was Jason Wong, lah, right? But there was no contact to him and all. So I thought, okay, at some point I was just going to find a way to connect with him. Next day in church, he appeared, right? So and he was preaching about that's for life. So that was the start of that journey I had with him, right? But even before that, um, I realized when I look back at the journey that got me to that really dark place, and I started to reflect, and I realized that it was bred out of this insecurity in me because of the lack of identity. I didn't know who I was. So this picture is a picture that I used to be really proud of when I was in my first career with the ministry. Today, it serves as a reminder for me that I should never go down that road again because how I used to use this picture is I use it to um explain to my family why I couldn't be around for them, right? So this was me with my nice tanks, my units and all. Every time I bring my family to such displays of armor and all, it's always to show them, to justify why I had to be away for work. Wasn't a very proud thing for me to continue to hold. I mean, it wasn't a proud memory for me to hold on to today long, even though it used to be a very proud memory for me then when I was in service, right? And this was one of the pictures that was captured by one of my soldiers, showing me showing my son the tank, and I and that was my identity. That was how I define myself. with the uniform, with the rank, with the amount of hardware and all that I had. And that was how shallow it was. And when you take that away from me, or when that is being threatened in the course of the career, yeah, it just invokes the all the bad things in me, lor, right? And you can just imagine, I mean, for those of you with sons, right? If you ever put your son in NS under someone like me who is so insecure, it's not a good thing to have, right? For all the wives here, imagine if if you married somebody who's really insecure like me, not a good time to be having also, right? Lots of things to work through and all, and that was what my wife had to go through, what my kids had to go through. So I realized that this was some of the things that I wish I had from my dad, growing up, because these were the exact things that I felt lacking in my heart. Um, I didn't know what authority was because I never had that male authority figure in my life. My dad provided a lot for the family, but he was away most of the time. He was traveling. He lived abroad. I only I don't even see him enough at my significant life stages for him to be able to even speak into my life and all. Um, he chose to take the faith of his father, my grandfather, which was um, can't remember the that Japanese term now. It was Shinto or something, right? Of Buddhism, you know. While the rest of my grandmothers, my mom and all, I mean, they were all Catholics. So it was a very confusing stage in my life growing up. Right? I didn't know his heart. And what I meant by his heart is I didn't know how he felt towards my mom, my family, and us. More often than not, I felt like we were just burdens, hindrances for him in his career advancements and all of. So naturally, that became part of me because career became the main thing that I thought I should be striving for. I was never acknowledged as a son, even as a man, never had that rite of passage that, brought me into adolescence, that brought me out of adolescence into emerging adulthood and all. So naturally, affirmation and all were found in all the wrong places. And why I was insecure is because I was never accepted unconditionally. There were always conditions and all. So I find that, I just had to keep performing, keep striving, keep being in the top three. And even being in the top three wasn't good enough, right? It's always why not first, right? So that performance driven thing just got me to be really, really exhausted, really, really tired and that pretty much carried me throughout my life. Which I'm thankful today I have a chance to redeem that mindset, right? And I think the biggest thing is not knowing that I have a destiny, not knowing that my life has a purpose, and not having a place of refuge to be in to even rest. Because of that performance driven thing, there was never a chance to rest, and that yeah, I guess that caused me to hit that bad spot in my life, right? Um, but like I say, I was thankful that God intervened at the time, brought in Jason and a few other men's ministry leaders and networks. Then they were starting to rise. So through Jason, I got to be reconnected to That's for Life again. I got to be reconnected to Elijah 7000, which is a Father's Prayer author, which meets just next door now. Used to be here for a season in GBG. Yeah. So, and that was what I found useful for me because I would never have been able to do all this on my own. But because I was placed in a community of men, I had no choice but to be held accountable for who I was. And that helped to shift certain things along the way. Right. So through this through this group, I found restoration as a son. So one of the things that we used to do a lot at during the Elijah 7000 prayer meetings is we will always remind everyone, you just leave your banners and your name cards and all at the door. Um, you leave all the burdens of the world at the door. We come in as sons, right? We come in as sons, anticipate or going into our father's presence, and then we live as brothers, right, to one another and all. So that was something that's always been said, but I could never understand that because for me, faith has always been a religion in the sense that God is just distant, right? And I could never understand God as Father. It was a concept that was just far from me because I had such a bad relationship with my own dad that I just couldn't connect, or I didn't even want God as Father because I didn't want him to be like to have the same relationship that I had with my own father. So I struggled, and I've always asked God, if you are Father, just show me, right? Just show me. So one fine day, just as I was saying that prayer, I felt this presence come over me. And I just couldn't. I think I was seated, and from being seated, I went straight to the floor. I started kneeling. I started weeping uncontrollably. Then I started wailing. Everything in my mind protested like, stop. This is embarrassing, right? Everyone's looking at you, right? Big men don't cry. I mean, all those things are in my mind, right? But at the same time, there was so much relief, so much. First of all, there was a lot of love. There was a lot of compassion. There was that warmth, like as if I was being hugged, being wrapped. And there was that relief of being able to let all those things just be purged from my body. And instead of shame, there was no shame. I couldn't even feel shame in that process, even though the mind was going on overdrive in another direction, right? uh and all. So and that was good. And I heard my son, and I think that morning, I mean, that moment, I knew I was a son of God. I knew I belong. I finally understood the heritage that I had and all. And I thought that was it. But suddenly he showed me his heart for my father. That came as a shock for me because suddenly I saw my father as a son to him that has not turned back, that has not acknowledged, right? But yet God's heart for my father in wanting to reconnect, in wanting to just be present in there once again, just kind of overwhelmed me, and that kind of remove all the bitterness and all the resentment that I had for my dad at that point in time. I mean, at that point in time, I had such a bad relationship with my dad that I wanted to that I kind of severed all ties with him, refused to let the kids meet him and all, and I just held him and you know held him away. But yet at that point, I knew that I wanted to reconnect and all. Yeah, he gave me that chance to do that. So that became and it took me a while. It took me almost 2 years to finally reach out to my dad once again to really make that final reconciliation. So now the situation has kind of been turned. For me, pushing him away and all, now I am pursuing him because now he's the one that doesn't want to reconnect with me because of possibly because of shame, because of guilt and everything else. So he's keeping away, and I'm the one pursuing him and all, and having to remind him that I'm not doing it for your money. Okay, I just want a relationship with you, right? You keep your money, you give it to whoever you want, right? Yeah, I'm not here for your money, right? But that's how he probably thinks, right? Yeah. So yeah. And yeah, so managed to get him to meet my kids. And one thing I realized when I saw him reconnect with my kids and was my kids were I noticed that my kids were observing every single interaction I had with my dad. And that's when I realized that if I wanted my kids to know what being a good son or daughter was to their father, I needed to demonstrate that. I needed to show them how I love, how I respect, how I honored my dad, so that hopefully they pick up something from there. Which was something I could never see. And the other thing that helped me to also forgive him was when I was given a picture or made to remember his relationship with my grandfather, who was an even harder man. Okay, so my grandfather is a true blue businessman who did everything possible to have a very thriving business, providing well for the family, but putting family at the last of the priorities and all. So my dad suffered from that because all the things I shared with you about what I needed from my dad, I realized the same things, those gaps in my heart that caused the father wounds were the same things that he never received from my grandfather. And suddenly the compassion came in because I knew that he couldn't give me what he didn't receive. And that helped me to overcome all the resentment and all, and to really reach out to him as somebody who needed to, even for him to have the father's love in his life. I can't do that for him in the earthly manner, but I'm sure God in his ways will be able to reach to him in ways that I can never do it. But I just want front row seats to witness the day when it happens, so I can be like, aha, okay, then I got another story to tell, right? Yeah, an intergenerational story. Yeah, but I'm sure that day is coming because I'm sure he is starting to see it. Even if it's not through me, my kids are going to be ministering to him in ways that I cannot, right? Yeah. So after sorry, I realized you all didn't see. Oh, yeah, yeah. That was a picture of reconciliation that I hold dear with me. Okay, the other thing that I once I had my relationship with Abba Father restored, I could work on my relationship with my dad. And when I managed to find that reconciliation and address the father wounds I had, I could work on my relationship with my wife, right? And we know from Genesis 1 that, my wife and I, we are all, men and women, we are meant to come together with God and dominate the world, right? And we know that everything possible in the world is just going to stop that from happening. And it's the same in the same manner. We had such a tough uh, marriage. Not because she wasn't trying. She was the one trying. I was the one stonewalling and withholding. So for 7 years, I put my wife through a very, very rough time with my insecurities, with my struggles, with my career and everything else. And because I didn't know what it meant to fulfill my role as a husband and even as a father to her children. So what I learned from a few people like Jason and everybody else, right? This one didn't, I didn't learn this piece of gem from my wife. I learned it from the man that I prayed with. That she actually prayed 7 years for godly men to enter my life. She could have walked out on the marriage so many times. I gave her so many opportunities and platforms to walk out on the marriage, but she didn't. Okay, so I confess, huh? I'm the kind that don't have the courage to say you go, right? So I was hoping that she will say, I will go, and I'll be like, okay, right? So confession. Yeah. So she didn't. She stayed on. She stayed on and she tried so hard to make the marriage work. I tried so hard not to make it work because I didn't know how to, and I was full of shame and guilt, right? Yeah, so through her prayers, for 7 years, godly men did come into my life. And not just one or two, but actually a lot, lah, right? My whole life is suddenly just filled with a lot of godly men, right? And I'm thankful for that because I'm thankful that she never gave up on me, right? So I had a few opportunities to make it right. So uh, I attended this ministry called Father School. It's from the Durano Father School, Korean ministry. And in that session, they do a lot of they kind of undertake a lot of interestingly rituals for us to address father wounds, to acknowledge our to get a better sense of our roles as husbands and all. But at the same time, there's a lot of prophetic acts that's undertaken during the course of that to break certain bondage to a lot of funny things. One of the biggest things that was done there was to get the father school graduates to wash the wife's feet, right? So during my course, as part of the graduation, I'm supposed to wash my wife's feet. At that time, I was still working on the relationship and all, and the ego and pride in me just refused to do that. So when my wife told me that she had to travel that weekend, right? When we were supposed to have that, I was kind of happy. I was like, okay, um, you know, my wife is not going to be around, but I'm still going to graduate and get my T-shirt, right? Yeah. So I went through it, but at the same time, there was that thing in me that kind of felt like, what if we did it, right? What if would it have changed things, right? So funny thing was, after I passed out from father school, I managed to convince my wife to attend mother school. She went through it, and then next thing I know, she went through the Korean version because at that time it was only done in Korean for mother school. So after attending mother school, she and another mother school graduate decided to co-found the English mother school for Singapore, which today she's still a volunteer of. Lor. Yeah. So that was one part. There was one particular incident, I think 2 years after my graduation, when father school and mother school came together for a combined graduation thing, right? So mother school will be there as the father school do the foot washing. So naturally, people remember that I didn't wash my wife's feet. So they said, since both of you are volunteers there, why don't you go and wash the feet? Cannot run away, right? So do it. So I thought, okay, I thought by then our relationship I thought it was a lot better. But I was surprised when I actually washed her feet. Um, so once again, I mean, I hate all this public crying thing, lah. Yeah, but it happened again, lah. So as I took the thing out. I thought it was just a matter of fact, just routine, right? Go there, do the thing. Yeah, take one feet, ask for forgiveness. Take the other feet, bless the feet. As I was doing that, I was just weeping and weeping, and everyone was just there, smiling kindly, and then my wife was giggling. That was like, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, okay, God, okay, yeah. I do it unto you. I do it unto my wife, right? Yeah, full submission, full obedience. Just do it. Yeah, and I think that continued to break a lot of things, continued to unearth a lot of things that I was able to release on that day too. Long. Yeah. So for husbands, wives, all these things that continue to happen, you'd be surprised how God uses every single one of it to just continue to minister and to help us remove not just issues in the current age, but even issues that we used to have, like mother's wounds, father's wounds, and all those stuff. Right? It's an ongoing refinement process. And a kind brother in his 70s then told me, hey, don't worry, lah. Every day I'm discovering something new that I have to ask for forgiveness for, lah. And we've really been married for more than 50 years. So every day every few times there's always something new coming out, lah. I still don't understand my wife, lah. She also don't understand me, lah. But this is a journey, right? And this comes from somebody in his 70s. Today he's in his 80s, and still saying the same thing to all the younger fathers and husbands like me, lah. And there's one thing that we've also unearthed that I thought maybe I should share. So, at home, for me, communication is one of the biggest things, right? No matter how much we try to work on communication, we just find that, my wife and I, we just can't land on the same plane most times. Actually, all the time. So, yeah, but yet we have to try, right? So something as simple as if I'm driving home from work and then she asks me, "Where are you? Why are you not back yet?" Right? Oh, I get all flustered and then I'll be like, you know how hard today was, and I'm trying to get home as soon as I can now, and you're asking me where am I? Why are you not back yet? And so on. I know I have to be back for dinner, right? But yet that simple thing just go off wrong. She's just concerned and wanting to know where I am. Suddenly, but for me, when I receive it, it came across as an accusation. And then I suddenly find that I needed to justify find all the justification can, right? Why I am not back yet, right? So I start thinking of 10 reasons why I'm not back yet. Then I try to find a way to turn it around to say, hey, look, I'm working so much harder here. Can you cut some slack and all that, right? Suddenly I go into a very defensive posture when all she wanted to know was just where are you, right? But I can't stop myself from doing that. And it brought me back to those jokes that we used to have in the military, right? Where we study war battles and conflicts and wars and all, right? We always ask which side started the war first, right? Who shot the first bullet, right? And okay, not as a fact, but anecdotally we know that it's always the arms dealer that fires the first shot in any major conflict, right? Yeah, because the one who stands to gain the most will be the one to fire the first shot, and it's never the two sides that's fighting. So likewise for us, I realized that there's always an arms dealer at home or within the marriage that always serves to spark off something like this that I need to guard against. It's never against her. Neither is it a flaw or a lack on my end. But we need to be mindful about that arms dealer that prowls around like a roaring lion that we need to constantly guard against because one wrong word, one wrong feeling, one wrong thought, careless thought could lead to something with unintended consequences. And that's the one thing that we always want to guard against. And for me, it's a constant battle against this arm dealer. Um, and to constantly try to find new perspectives to all the situations that we face within our marriage and even at home. Right. Okay. So, oh, yeah. Finally, when it comes to restoration as a father, like I say, I was fortunate that I was in a company of a lot of godly men and fathers who are very interested in what fatherhood should look like and how it should be lived out. So Malachi 4:5-6 is one of the verses that we constantly, short of a better word, declare or chant at every meeting so that, we're mindful that, we need to have our hearts turned, the hearts of us turned towards our children and likewise, lest the land be cursed. And this plays out in so many instances. You go to the prisons, you know that they are there. Many of the men are there because um, the hearts of their fathers are turned against them, right? Worse, they get hit and abused and all, and their own hearts are turned away and all. And we know that, especially for my 7 years in the social service sector, I realized that a lot of the issues that appear in our people space, social service space, whether we see social injustice, it's always from the lack of whether it's a man's voice, whether it's the lack of a father, a male authority figure in somebody's life and all, or even in a circumstance. And that's something that we felt that we needed to do more of. We needed to get dads, men to rise up, not just in the homes, in the community, in the church, but even in our nation and the nations beyond, because we need uh, men to start regulating ourselves as a start, right? And the truth of the matter is, every time I go into the prisons, right, and when we run a fathering talk, we don't even prescribe what needs to be done. We go in, we just raise the awareness of what your wife needs or what your ex-wife needs, what your children needs at various life cycle stages or even stages of the marriage. The men in there immediately click. They know what they need to be doing. They start feeling bad that they cannot do any of it because they are there. They start weeping. Even rival gang members will start hugging each other and consoling each other in there. I'll be like, okay, so the first time I ever entered prison to do a program, right? My hands were shaking. So I went in. There were, I think, if I'm not wrong, there were, I think 12 of them in there, right? Looking at me, right? So I walk in, they look at me. Then after that, they say, "Sir, your hand is shaking. Are you scared of us?" I'm like, "Of course I'm scared of you." They say, "First time, ah?" I say, "Yes." They say, "Oh, don't worry. Yeah, we won't beat you unless we want to." Oh, then my hand shake even more, right? Now we like, you know. And then we start connecting as sons. We start connecting as because we start to address father wounds and all, right? Then we start connecting as husbands and fathers. By the time we get to fathers, right? Wow, I tell you, the eyes are moisture. Even uh men from so-called rival gangs, right, or groups, who refuse to sit together, they start hugging each other and then they start trying to console each other and telling them, don't worry, you're going to be released soon, right? You can go out and do something, or the next visit you do this, you do this. They have their own solutions. So the thing I realize is I don't need to tell anybody what to do. I just tell them just give them new perspectives, redeem some of their mindsets. They will find their own way to restore the relationships, to seek reconciliation, to make restitution. Um, and that to me is amazing. No work of ours, no work of the curriculum. We know that it's the Spirit ministering to them and Father God coming in to turn their hearts towards each other, because we see that happening again and again and again. Yeah. Because I have experienced that myself, right? So, but having experienced, oops, Sorry, I'm not very good with this clicking. Yeah. So I had the so for me, my true restoration as a father was when I had the privilege to baptize my whole family in the Jordan River when we visited, when we did one of the Israel tours, I think, with the group of E7K dads again. No? Yeah. So for me, it was significant because that day I knew what I had to do uh, as a father in the family. I knew I had to make right whatever that had been done wrong. Not just me inflicting things within the family, but me not standing up for things that were going wrong and me not making right circumstances within my own family. I need to be the protector in my family. I need to be the prophet in my family. I need to be the priest of my family. I need to be the king of my family, not to lord over them, but to serve them. So those were the things that became very clear for me uh, when I had that privilege to do this. Right? And of course, after having my life redeemed, restored, and all, right, how do I walk that straight and narrow path, right? I had to submit to, I mean, first of all, I have to make sure that I protect my time with Father God. Then I need to submit myself to spiritual mentors, have men work in my life. And I think the beauty of having men work in my life is it's not just for me, right? Just having support and accountability, but actually it's more for my wife. Because today, if my wife has a problem with me and she cannot get through to me, right? All she needs to do is just call Jason Wong. Jason Wong will call me up and then cannot run away, right? So just have to adjust. So she has that valve already, right? If she doesn't go to Jason Wong, she'll go to another guy who has the rights to speak life into me, and then she can get to me, lor, right? And I think that's the confidence I give to her, the key I give to her in case she just can't get through, or if I stonewall, if I get into a really bad rut, right? Uh, of course, the accountability groups is something that I would encourage all men to have because it's very difficult to be a man today, right? It's very hard to be a son, a man, a husband, a father. Even for myself, no matter how much I try, there are still things that I can't share with my wife because I just don't want to burden her. That's from my perspective. But from her perspective, by not doing so, it hurts her because she feels like she can that we don't have a good enough relationship, or I don't have that trust in her for me to be able to share every single thing with her. So that's something I constantly struggle with. By wanting to protect her, I'm actually hurting her. But yet I keep going down that that path, right? And I keep doing it again and again. And no matter how many times she writes me, it still happens, and I'm still learning to get past some of this. I'm still trying to redeem and get a better perspective on some of it. You know. But with other men, it's a lot easier because most of the time, every week when we meet, we'll be asking each other, hey, how's life? How's your wife? Right? You don't answer in 3 seconds, it's a problem, right? And then you start having a deeper conversation, right? Easy to address how's life, not easy to address how's your wife. And then, that's where we kind of hold one another accountable for the state of our marriages. No? And I felt that I needed this. I needed these three things, which I advocate to a lot of men's groups, fathers groups, even youth groups, to have this infrastructure in place so that in at times when um, we don't know how to seek help ourselves, there is that support that will kick in to make sure that we don't veer off the wrong path, or we don't get stuck in our secret lives and all, right? And it gives me better clarity on my identity and the many roles that I have to address. And you find that even though it's easy for me to put the roles there, it changes at every life cycle stage. It changes in every season. The emphasis changes in all the seasons for us. But one thing I just want to highlight for all men again, is whether we like it or not, we're the thermostats at home. We're not the thermometer. We don't state the temperature or the spiritual atmosphere. We actually dictate the spiritual atmosphere at home, and we need to be doing that. We need to be declaring, the kingdom in our homes, at our workplaces, every space that we are in, because we are the thermostat and we need to set it right, right? You see, my wife can change the temperature at home very, very easily, right? She can do all the good things with the kids and all, right? But when I come home from work and I bring all the burdens of work home and I walk through the door with that work face, all her efforts will go to nothing, right? Because suddenly the kids will be like, oh, daddy is like that. Everybody will stay away, right? Even my wife will not go near me and she'll stay away. So whether I like it or not, I have an impact on the atmosphere at home, and I need to watch that. So what I do most times is before I go back home at the end of the day, I will always stop somewhere to have a cup of tea, right? And then go home. So the tea becomes that valve. On days when I don't stop for tea, okay, I was going to say beer also, right? Whether I stop for beer or tea, if I don't do that and I go back home in the work mode, it's just bad. Yeah, it's going to be a very, very tough evening, and it takes me a long, many more hours to make it right, right? Before the kids sleep, before my wife rest and all. So the whole evening is just spoiled. Yeah. So for me personally, I'm very, very mindful. The face, the temperament, the posture I bring back home. Uh, because the moment I step through the door, that's it. It's showtime, right? Uh, and it's not about being non-authentic and all. I think I would want to be real, but at the same time, there are consequences to some of these things, right? So this is something that my wife also knows. That's why sometimes when I come back and she sees my face, she will try to give me some cues that I should watch myself, right? Or she will just not talk. And I know that by her not talking, it means that I better start thinking about why she doesn't want to say anything, right? And then start being aware of my posture and my temperament. Right. Yeah. So after I found restoration, after I managed to restore all my relationships with God, with my wife and father, with my kids, I became a volunteer with Dads for Life. And then at some point, I was asked to join Dads for Life in a full-time capacity. So I had the opportunity to move, excuse me, from beneficiary to volunteer to full-time staff. Now I'm back to being a volunteer again. I had a good 7 years with the Center for Fathering. And the truth is, I'm going to share with you some of the things that they do so that you know what they do as a secular ministry. But at the same time, many of the things I'm going to be sharing are a bit dated. I mean, those things kind of happen on my time. I'm not sure what the new team is doing. I like to think that they're doing a lot better, right? Because I'm only involved in the volunteer space right now, just serving the constituencies that I used to serve during my time, right? So it was also a place where I found the most support. I had the most pruning as a son, as a husband, as a father. Uh, yeah, so I'm just glad for the 7 years of pruning, lah. So this is what they do and or what you will see them doing these days. Okay, so these are all the issues, all the effects of fatherlessness that is if you want I'll be glad to share the slides with you. Yeah, so these are all the things that we've discovered are the effects of fatherlessness in Singapore, and we found it to be true in 29 other nations also. When I share it with other men's groups and father ministries overseas, everyone seemed to resonate with some of these issues. These are all the men's issues, right? And it's all bred from fatherlessness. So when I entered the center, all these things presented itself. I was like, oh, how are we going to do any of this? There were too many things to address, but we were just my team and I we were just fortunate at that point in time that actually we didn't have to think of anything because all we needed to do was just some of us go on our knees, see where God was already at work in the community, and we just came alongside to partner Him in doing it, and we slowly address a lot of these things even up to today. So, and that's why I say Ephesians 2:10 is we just need to know what we are called for, what He's already doing, and just be able to discern it, and we just went down that road, right? So Center for Fathering was just one entity. That's for Life was just one entity, was just a car decal at that point in time. I think over time it kind of morphed, it kind of got vernacularized, it kind of got absorbed into the core of every ethnic community, every faith community in Singapore. Today, in fact, some people even thought that That's for Life was a Muslim movement because the the Muslims are driving it so hard. So the Mufti himself, the head of Islam, is preaching on fathering 4 times a year. He has every year he has 4 really wonderful sermons that he shares. Pastor Jerry, sometimes I share with him some of these sermons. He should have the record of some of these things, no? Right? That's how intentional they are about raising fathers for the nation, because they find that to have a father who is actively involved in the family and in the community is their only protection against radicalization, against the youth falling away from the faith. Sounds very familiar to what we have, right? Right? And every time I hear him speak, every time I hear all his other imams sharing and all the Muslim, I get invited to a lot of Muslim conferences and meetings and all. And every time I hear them talking about when it comes to fathering, right, they will always say these 3 things. It's very important to know your father's heart. It's very important to it's important to do your father's will, and it's important to be good sons to your father. The same 3 things are very familiar to many of us, right? We kind of know where it originates from and what it means, right? Whether it's knowing, understanding father's heart, or whether it's just sonship. But they have grasped this so deeply that they are putting it into the community all the time. In the prisons, every weekend, every Saturday, you will have a lot of Muslim trainers going in to run the fathering programs, talks for all the prisoners. I mean, all the incarcerated residents, right? Uh, and at least for my time when I was there, for a good 5 to 6 years when we were there, when we were running the programs by the Muslim trainers and all, none of the residents who have attended the fathering program have gone back in. The rate of recidivism for them was zero. And we kind of know why, because once you know what your family needs, you kind of need to stay out there to protect your daughter, to protect your wife, to protect your son, and to make sure that they don't go back in again. And some of them come out and wait for their kids to get released also, right? And they keep them out. And a lot of them have come back in as our volunteers. And now they are waiting for, that 3-year time bar before they can go back in as a volunteer to serve the other inmates and all. So that ecosystem has really happened. But today out there, there are a lot of pockets of uh, desisters, right? Ex-residents who are just staying out and helping one another stay out and to serve their families. Uh, you will hear of a lot of them, lah. A lot of their names are like Bruce Matthew and everybody else, right? Anil Davids and all, who are doing a great job out here and who used to be beneficiaries of both the Dads for Life and the Yellow Ribbon initiatives. So, yeah. Right. So, we, and of course, we had Moms for Life, because we realized that dads cannot be dads for life if moms don't release us to be dads for life, if moms don't create that space for dads to come in, right? If maternal gatekeeping continues to be a mainstay, dads just cannot come in, right? So yeah, so moms need to be secure in their identity. Also, moms need to take a step back so that dads can come in into that space. So that birth Moms for Life. That also birth the vernacular expression of Moms for Life, which is Ibu Sepanjang Hayat. And I think this year they are working on getting the Indian mothers community going also. You know. So these are all coming up, and like I say, it's the main architect is up there, right? He prepares the hearts, he prepares the communities for them to embrace the truth and to express it in their own ways in their communities. Okay, so these are just some of the initiatives that you might come to see. We realize that we just need platforms, lots of platforms for men to come out to do something with the kids. If we run a program for, say, fathers, right? No fathers will turn up. As in, if I were to put a an EDM out for a fathering workshop, right? We find that no man will sign up for it. 50% will be registered by their wives. The other 50% will be registered by friends who have attended the program, right? So far, or at least during my time, I never had one man who said, "Oh, I saw this program and I came here," right? Because I asked every workshop I attend, I will ask this question, right? Who came here on your own accord? Who was who were registered by wife? Who came because of a friend? Yeah. So those were my stats then. But today I think they have much better stats. I think it's starting to get a lot more traction. Yeah. So these are just some of the many engagement platforms that the organization will do. And you find, and 90% of all these are done by volunteers. So Center for Fathering serves as that organizing platform to create, to generate resources, and then the volunteers will come alongside and to drive some of this. Yeah. So today, today this is just like I said, this is dated lah. This is correct as of last year only, I think. Yeah, this is the impact. I'm not sure what the impact is going to be, but I'm sure it's going to be much better lah. But at least when I left, this was kind of the report card that my management team had then lah. And I highlight this because this is the work of our father. It had nothing to do with any one of us. It was just us seeing what he was doing and just partnering him in all those spaces. Even the 30 nations collaborating on fathering was something that we could never imagine. We never imagined something homegrown could go out there, and today some of us are still serving those nations. You know, and there is a huge group. And this is the ecosystem of fathering lah. All the fathering ministries that has come alongside to make sure that men are not um left unsupported. Fathers have an opportunity to reconcile within the family, and to start getting more men to live life together in community. You know. So we are, and you can see that. Okay, I didn't put in the Muslim groups because it could be taken out of context. But these are mostly the Christian community that has finally found a reason to come around together to work alongside one another, right? So this is where I'm going to end the sharing of my life, how God has redeemed it, use it to perpetuate a cause that now I truly feel strongly for, and which I'm glad to continue to support moving forward. And these are all the ecosystem of all the other partners that are alongside that will provide support for churches and the Christian community here. There are a lot more secular communities out there today than the Christian communities. There are a lot more Muslim communities out there than the Christian community. But I think it's all in his timing, right? He has a way of bringing this together so that hopefully in Singapore we will start having everyone growing up with the father's heart, understanding what true sonship is, because we are meant to herald the kingdom, to instill the plumb line of what kingdom living should be here in Singapore as we become the Antioch for the other nations out there, right? So thank you very much for having me here. Sorry, questions, clarifications. Yeah, yeah. I was an armor officer. Okay, so I took a few scholarships with the ministry to study. So I was a uniform guy growing up, just alternating between field appointments and policy work at HQ. Mm. So I left as a senior lieutenant colonel. You know. Yes. I think it's a lot to do with me because I used to believe that I had to strive for performance, right? So performance became everything. And you know that when you join a ministry, it's like uh, unless we are a president scholar, we don't have that travel later, right? We kind of need to make sure that we go all out for every single appointment, every single rank and all. So there's never a letdown. So I find that I had to devote a lot of my time to the work and all, just to make sure that I get the grade, I get the opportunities and all. So I constantly have to be out there because anytime away from the office, anytime away from the boardroom is not a good thing, right? You got to be inside to be in mind, right? Yeah. So there's no letting up. Yeah. There's no downtime, no real break. You constantly have to be piped in just uh, but I think that was me because even after I left the ministry, when I went into the NPO, I adopted the same work ethics and it was driving me crazy, right? Yeah. So it's something that I had to redeem for myself to be secure on who I am and to do what I feel and to do things with purpose. So even today in the business space, one of my biggest fears was just being a businessman and just going all out for P&L and everything else, right? Which I do, but I make sure I do it with a conscience. So that's the redemptive part of it, lah. So P&L is still important. I mean, garnering every contract and all is still important. Making sure the cash flow is positive is still important. But at the same time, along the way, we make sure that we do not compromise on family relationships. We don't put our people in a position where they have to choose work over family. We don't. We make sure that we disciple upwards, outwards. We disciple the whole supply chain of partners, stakeholders, other owners, and anybody else that comes within our sphere of influence, right? You talk to me, you're going to hear God. I mean, without me having to say anything, right? Yeah. So I think that's that redemptive perspective or mindset that I think I'm slowly starting to move into.